because I have to look down when I'm writing and this is coming in the way. Okay, if you keep it like this, is it audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, if it's not audible, please let me know. But at least you should be audible to me when you say it or no. So, let's discuss this verse and tell the meaning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Krishna is telling over here, Shraddhavan. Shraddhavan is the person with faith. Labhate. Labhate is to gain. Jnanam is knowledge or wisdom. So he says the faithful can gain wisdom. So let's recite each line as I explain. Shraddhava labhate jnanam.
Shraddhava labhate jnanam.
So is faith alone enough? No, Krishna says some other things are required. Tatparaha. Tatparaha means in Hindi it means competent. Tatpara. One who is good, capable of doing things. Tatparaha literally means over here one who is attached to that. Tat, that truth, paraha. One who considers important, one who considers most important, one who is seeking that knowledge. And what is the test that a person is seeking that knowledge? Sanyate indriyaha. A person regulates their senses. It's like if a student is serious about studying and gaining excellence in the subjects that they are studying. A student can't be fooling around constantly, partying and indulging in the senses. Tatparaha sanyate indriyaha. Then, now while this can apply to any form of knowledge, Krishna specifically says here, this is a special kind of knowledge. Jnanam labdva. So, Jnanam Labdva, on attaining this knowledge, there is a special result. Param Shantim. One will attain the supreme peace. Jnanam Labdva Param Shantim.
Jnanam labdva param shantim.
Achirenadhigacchati.
Achirenadhigacchati.
So, Achiren means quite quickly. Chira is after a long time. Achiren is not after a long time. Adhigacchati. Person will attain. So, let's recite the verse now. Shraddhava labhate jnanam.
Shraddhava labhate jnanam.
Tatparaha sanyate indriyaha.
Tatparaha sanyate indriyaha.
Jnanam labdhva param shantim.
Jnanam labdva param shantim.
Achirenadhigacchati.
Achirenadhigacchati.
Shraddhava labhate jnanam.
Shraddhava labhate jnanam.
Tatparaha sanyate indriyaha.
Tatparaha sanyate indriyaha.
Jnanam labdhva param shantim.
Jnanam labdva param shantim.
Achirenadhigacchati.
Achirenadhigacchati.
So one last time, together all of us.
Shraddhava labhate jnanam. Tatparaha sanyate indriyaha. Jnanam labdva param shantim. Achirenadhigacchati.
Om Jnantirandhasya Jnananjalishalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashtadeshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Abhinana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you all for coming today. And as mentioned, I'll be discussing on the topic of the role of intelligence and logic in the spiritual journey. So let's look at what this verse is saying. I'll be using this as a whiteboard to write and depict things. I hope it's visible to all of you from here as well as from there.
Yeah.
So what is this verse saying? That Shraddhaval, that faith that leads to Shraddhaval Labate Jnanam. So from faith, knowledge comes. This knowledge is more of a deeper kind of knowledge, wisdom. But he's saying it's not just faith. There is something more required. Along with faith, there has to be Shraddha. Along with that, dedication is required. Tat Paraha. One should be dedicated to seeking that knowledge. And all that combines together. And then after that, there's one more thing he says. That is regulation. That we need to regulate our life. So spiritually, or for that knowledge, we need to be dedicated. And in other areas of our life, we need to be regulated. So when these three come together, then we will get knowledge. But what is this? Now, what is the speciality of this knowledge? Krishna says, from this knowledge, soon, achirena, one will get the supreme peace. Param Shanti. So this is what Krishna is telling is the process, broadly speaking, it is the process to enlightenment. When I was studying engineering 25 years ago, actually 30 years ago roughly. So 25 years ago, I almost finished it. So when I was studying, at that time, I could say that to some extent, this part was there in my life. I had faith in the power of education. Since my childhood, some of you may notice that I need crutches to walk. So basically, when I was 1, I got polio. I was walking normally. One day I just fell down. And I could never get up and walk. I don't remember that incident. My parents told me later. But one of my earliest memories is that some relatives or neighbors had come to our home. And they were probably consoling my mother. So they were probably saying, it's so sad that your son got polio. And I remember my mother saying that whatever he lacks physically, God will provide him intellectually. So at that time I heard, I had two impacts. Who is this being called God who decides what to give and what to take? And the second was, somehow from that time, I started identifying with the intelligence much more, with my intellectual capacity, much more than my physical ability or disability. So, and so although I couldn't play any sports, I couldn't do any of the normal activities, I never really felt handicapped. So for me, the crutches now are just a part of normal life. For somebody who sees me, they notice the crutches as the first thing. But for me, the crutches are like my glasses. I can't see without them. I have to wear them. But you wear them and move on with life. Nobody makes a big hue and cry, oh, you got glasses. So it's just like that for crutches. So I had personally seen that becoming absorbed in the pursuit of knowledge, it uplifted my consciousness. And I felt that it could do the same for others. And that's why, even when I was studying my engineering, I started sharing whatever knowledge I had with others. I joined a welfare organization, social welfare organization, and I started as a part of their community outreach activities, I was offering free tuition classes to the kids over there, the kids in underprivileged areas especially. So there was one underprivileged area just behind our college. I used to go there. Now, so Shraddhavan Labhati Jnanam Tatpara. I was eager to learn, I was eager to study, I was eager to grow, and to a large extent, Sanyatendriya, by my upbringing and by my physical limitation, I never was into any kind of major bad habits. So I would gain knowledge. But I noticed that this knowledge did not give me much peace. It was as if I had knowledge, but something major was missing. So I was always among the good students in my class, but I wanted to be the best student. I wanted to be number one. And somehow I was never the number one. I was second, I was third, I was fourth, sometimes I joined first, but never the first. And that caused a great dissatisfaction for me. And finally, I gave the GRE exam when I was studying engineering. It's the exam for, especially coming to America for the post-grad studies. In India we call it post-grad, here they call it, in North America they call it grad studies. So because from my childhood, English was something I loved. One of my hobbies was just picking up a dictionary and memorizing words. So generally most people from India struggle in English because it was second, third, sometimes fourth language. But for me English was like my home territory. I did very well. And I came first, not just in my college, but in the history of my college. I was the first in the entire state of Maharashtra. Several million people, population, student population also huge. So I was elated. Typically it's Yahoo kind of thing. But then after a short while, I realized that looking at the marks itself does not give much satisfaction. It's only when someone congratulates that I feel some happiness. And then after that, I went to my college and I was a celebrity for something. And so many people congratulated me. But then somehow, 3 of my friends, one after another, they forgot to congratulate me. So when the fourth forgot to congratulate me, I was annoyed. But when the second person forgot to congratulate me, I was irritated. When the third friend forgot to congratulate me, I was enraged. Now, at the same time, I didn't want to seem pathetic by asking, why are you not congratulating me? So, I was sitting and trying to keep my discontent and my annoyance and emotion to myself. And it was at that time, it was almost as if I suddenly saw myself from above, looking down. It's not a literal out-of-body experience, but it's almost like a conceptual kind of thing. I said, wait a minute. You thought that this achievement will make you happy. But rather than making you happy, it has only made you more dependent for your happiness on others. In the past, you could just interact with your friends and go about normally. But now when you are interacting, you are so discontented. So something is wrong. So the Jnanam Labdhva was there. I had gained the knowledge, I had got the, not just I had gained the knowledge, but I had also gained the external certification that I had gained the knowledge. But there was no Shanti. There was on the other hand, only Shanti. There was discontentment. There was dissatisfaction. So that was the time when I started thinking, what is it that will actually bring satisfaction? I started thinking, looked ahead at my life. I might come to America for studies. I might get into an Ivy League university. I might get some degree. I might get some, might graduate with honors, I might get into a top research institute, I might win some awards, I might even write some books in future. But as I look at all these things, I look at the future of my life, I saw that none of those achievements could give me intrinsic satisfaction. They would all keep me dependent on externals. And that's when I started thinking, there must be something. Is there something that can be done by which I can find happiness? So we can say there is happiness broadly of two kinds. There is extrinsic happiness or external happiness. That means the thing, we get something, but the happiness comes not through the achievement, but through the recognition that comes from the achievement. And there is intrinsic happiness. So I was wondering what would be the intrinsic happiness. So when it was that time I was reintroduced to the Bhagavad Gita. In my childhood, I had memorized some verses and just read the Bhagavad Gita as an act of piety to please my parents. Not really taken it very seriously. But when I read several verses from the Bhagavad Gita, at that time it stood out to me. One of them was this. So it struck me that if I evaluated my life from this verse 439, I had followed more or less the process to knowledge. Okay, Shraddha, I had faith in the power of education. Tatpara, Sayatendriya. But with respect to the process to knowledge, that was right. But the purpose of knowledge, I had missed that. For what purpose is knowledge to be sought? So, when we seek knowledge, there is so much to learn in the world. What it is that we are seeking. So that I had missed out. So as I studied the Bhagavad Gita over the years, I realized that the knowledge that we seek can be at three broad levels. So we could say there can be circumstantial knowledge. And this is, all search for knowledge is ultimately driven by questions. So when we have questions, then we seek answers. Somebody tells us, read this book. Okay, why should I read it? Who are you to tell me to read? But say, if I have a question, if I find it difficult to concentrate, and say this book is going to 10 tips for improving concentration. Okay, I want to read. So it's when we have a question, then the answer becomes valuable. It's like, if you have a medicine, but you don't have the sickness that the medicine treats, then the medicine is not very valuable. You might keep it somewhere, you might forget where you kept it. So, similarly, the question's its value depends on, or rather put it, the question determines the value of the answer. If there's no question, then the answer may still have value, but the person doesn't consider it very valuable. So it is, in one sense, sickness that determines value of the medicine. So what is the knowledge that we are seeking? So we all have questions. Most of the times, our questions are about our circumstances. The circumstantial questions can be broadly, they are about food. That, okay, where will I get my next meal? Sometimes when people are finishing one meal, at that time they're thinking, okay, when will I have my next? So, are they thinking, even when they're having a meal, it's like you finish one meal and then you get what is called as a snack attack. You're attacked by the urge to have a snack. So, you may be thinking of food. Then, you may be thinking about sleep, rest. That you'll be thinking about, okay, when I'm tired, when will I get rest? How will I stay? Then, there is reproduction. We are Biologically, we are meant to perpetuate ourselves, but psychologically we are much more obsessed by that. And then of course there is security. There is ahara, nidra, bhayam. Mahabharata says, these are the normal 4 questions that animate me. Now, as a part of these, we can have further questions. So, we can have questions about, say, the stock market. But then, the stock market question, oh, has the stocks gone up or gone down? So, money, we see questions about money, but money is essentially a means to these things, isn't it? It's by money we get food, by which we can make arrangements for reproduction, we have security. So, now security does not just mean physical security. Security can mean also we want some relief, we want some shelter. And sometimes we may be bored and there's entertainment. Entertainment gives us shelter from the lack of, from boredom basically. So in India, just yesterday, this tournament called IPL got completed. Have you ever heard of IPL? Okay, you've heard about it. Then in India, there were 2 main forms of entertainment. So these are both like painkillers. One was cricket and the other was Bollywood. And then about 15 years ago, both of them got married. And they had a child. That child was IPL. So apparently somebody sent a news clip that there was a flight from somewhere like Chennai to Bangalore or something like that. So at that time, that happened to be at the same time when the match was there. So actually the pilot in that flight, every 2 minutes throughout the flight, he was making an announcement of the score. And because of he did that, all the passengers when they were getting out, they cheered and they clapped and they thanked him and they gave some charity to him. Oh, you're such a charitable person. You told us a news, so we give you charity money. So what is the score? That's also a question. But that's largely a circumstantial question. So 1 year, 2 years, 10 years down the line, how many people are going to remember? So there are circumstantial questions which are basically about largely our circumstances, what happens in our circumstances and how that affects us. And to a large extent, even science and technology as it exists today, especially technology, it is largely about our circumstances. It's about, okay, I stay in a place where it's very cold, so we need a heating arrangement. So what is the heating arrangement available? What are the various gadgets available? Which is cheaper, which is more effective, which is less noisy? These are questions. They're all associated with circumstances. So broadly, these are questions about means. What are the means by which I can make these circumstances around me better for myself? Now they're important questions in their own place. However, we humans, when we get this knowledge, this does not bring satisfaction. Some people may say, okay, food is so important. You're hungry, you're miserable. True, no doubt. But, okay, lack of food leads to distress. So all the starving people are distressed. But are all the well-fed people happy? No. The well-fed people have their own set of problems. So questions about means are important. But when there are means, if you consider absent, there's distress. So if we are in a place which is very cold and we don't know how to turn on the heater, that's a distress. But if the heater is turned on, that doesn't, when it is present, there is no happiness over there. Okay? We have other issues. There are so many other problems that come. Nowadays, for example, if you go to a place and Wi-Fi doesn't work. In fact, one of my friends was telling me that if you want to know how much self-control you have, how much control over your anger you have, you see when you turn on the Wi-Fi, you put the Wi-Fi password, the Wi-Fi doesn't come. How angry do you feel? Especially if something is important to do. So what happens is Now, okay, internet is there. That doesn't mean you're going to jump in ecstasy for the rest of your life because you have internet. So these are important, but they are questions about means. Now, beyond that, there's another set of questions, and these are existential questions. And corresponding to that, there is existential knowledge. Existential knowledge is more about meaning and purpose. There are means and there is meaning. So having means is important. Having food is important. Having money is important. So making money is important. But what we are making with money is even more important. Somebody can make a lot of money, but in the process of making money, if they are spoiling all their relationships, they are exploiting and abusing and disrespecting everyone. They may rise to the top, they may get a huge house, but all that the big house will provide them is the privilege of a lot of space in which to feel lonely and unhappy. So means are important, but meaning is even more important. So existential questions are questions about what will bring meaning to my life. What will actually add value to my existence? And we all have certain ideas. See, one of the biggest illusions, our modern society has many illusions. Modernity is one of its big illusions is that if we improve the means, automatically meaning will improve. We just provide better comfort for people, just remove many of their practical inconveniences, we just improve the standard of living. And that's important, no doubt. Nobody wants to live in poverty. But means alone don't equate with meaning. So we have in today's educational system a lot of education about means. If we consider, we study engineering, we study software, we study economics, we study law, we study business. All this is about means. Okay, by that you can get a position, you can get remuneration. But what about after that? How do we find meaning in life? That question is hardly ever addressed. That is meant to be addressed by philosophy and literature, but even they have become highly utilitarian nowadays. So the questions about meaning are, in one sense, what differentiate humans from animals. Animals also ask questions about food, reproduction, sleep, security. Now, they may not ask questions about what is the gadget for increasing temperature or decreasing temperature. The methods by which they seek those ends may be simpler. The methods by which we seek those ends might be much more sophisticated. But the ultimate ends that we are seeking are not necessarily higher. So the Bhagavad Gita begins with an existential question. Arjuna asks in 2.7, Pruchhami tvam dharma sammurachetaha. I want to know what is dharma. Now the word dharma has many different meanings. In English there are words which are called multivalent. Multivalent words means they have multiple meanings. So for example, the word run is in the Guinness Book of World Records because it has 540 meanings. I am going for a run. I am running because my car has stopped running. I am running away from this country because that person is running for president's post. But there are so many ways in which the word running can be used. But there are many meanings. Now, in English, there's only this one word, run, which has more than 500 meanings. In Sanskrit, there are more than 500 words which have more than 500 meanings. Now, so when there are multiple meanings, we depend on the audience intelligence to understand which meaning is being used. I was just in New York, and I gave a class. And after the the class, if some people come and talk with me, they appreciate the class. I ask them, what do you like the class? Or how did you find the class? What did you like in the class? So the organizer, I asked, how did you find the class? He's given a big smile. It was a killer. I don't want to be a killer. So now, killer, he was using it in a complimentary sense. But the word kill has a very, the word kill gives you a chill. It's not the most pleasant word. But the point is that words have different meanings. So dharma here means, it doesn't simply mean religion. We can say it can mean duty, but more appropriately in the context. Arjuna already has his Kshatriya duty. Arjuna already has his warrior's duty as to fight a war. He has his dynastic duty to protect his citizens. He is asking, when he is asking dharma, the most meaningful thing to do. What is it that will be meaningful for me at this stage? At the start of the Gita, Arjuna is torn between two dharmas, two duties. So he has come as a warrior to fight. So he has his Kshatriya dharma. His warrior's duty is he should fight. And that's what he came prepared for. But when he came on the battlefield, and then he came in the middle of the battlefield, Senayor Ubhayar Madhye, and then he saw that on his other side were all his relatives. Bhishma Drona Pramukhataha. Sojanam Mikatham Atva Sukhinasyam Madhava. So at that time, he was reminded of his Kula Dharma, his duty to his extended family, his dynasty. And if I have to do that duty, then I should not fight. So there were two duties which were pulling him to different directions. And he didn't know what to do at that time. And this became so agonizing for him. Because he wanted to do the right thing. So he said that you can just tell me, you just fight and you will win the whole kingdom. He said, there is no point in having means if there is no meaning. Nahi prapashyami maapanudya chokamuchoshanam indriyanam avapya bhuma vasaptanam vruddham rajyam suranam pichadipati. He said that if I fight, I can gain kingdom in this world. If I fight and win, he says, when you fight, there are two possibilities. You win, you lose. He says, if I win, I will gain the earth. He will become the part of the family that is the emperor of the earth. If he loses, he is not a coward, he is not going to flee. He will die honorably. If he dies, he will attain heaven. But he says, neither achievement there will be any meaning for me. He says, without understanding what is the right thing to do, even if I have heavenly enjoyment, if I have earthly enjoyment, no point. I couldn't be sure whether I had done that. So I want to know what will bring meaning in it. And that is where actually real human life begins. Because we are using our human privilege to ask the question that taps the unique human potential. Now there are various sources of meaning in life. And the Gita talks about various sources, and it culminates in the highest source of meaning is when we connect with the Supreme Lord and act in the mood of service. So some people, if they have a family, they raise their children. That gives them meaning in their life. So many struggles. The work in the office is difficult, the environment is difficult. I'll take care of my children. They are growing for their sake. Sometimes our family gives us something. Sometimes as we like a particular job, we have passion for that. Okay, I'm going to make some scientific breakthrough. I'm going to make some contribution. That gives something. Now all these sources of meaning are valuable. But ultimately, the meaning that comes from them is we could have various sources of meaning. They could range from our family, it could be our profession through which we are making a contribution, it could be we have some talents, somebody is a musician, and then I make some musical composition. They feel I am giving some joy to people through it, and they hear my songs. For some people, it could be nation, oh, I want to serve my country. All these give some fulfillment. They bring some meaning to a person's life. But all of them, if this is all that we have in our life, they will disappoint us. Srila Prabhupada would give the example of Gandhiji. He said he gave his life in service of the country. But then what happened? In front of his own eyes, the country partitioned. And it was not just a peaceful separation, it was a horrendous, nightmarish butchering of people. And then, even before he was assassinated, he was totally disappointed, devastated. So, he was, could say, among the leaders of human society that were in the last century. He's probably among the most principled, most noble. But even he was utterly disappointed. So while all of these can be sources of meaning, none of them can stand as independent sources of meaning. The only independent source of meaning is God, is Krishna. So when we act in a mood of service to Him, so the soul is eternal, Krishna is eternal. The relationship with the soul and Krishna is eternal. So we as spiritual beings are here, Krishna is here. And we can serve Krishna directly by the practicing bhakti. That is called as immersive. Where we directly serve Krishna. Now along with that, it is not just we turn away from the world and chant Hare Krishna and do some puja and do some katha. That's bhakti. There's another way of practicing bhakti. That is through we are souls. That is our fundamental identity. That is who we are at our core. But we have many functional identities. We may be males or females, we may be parents or children, we may be citizens of a particular country, we may be holding a particular job. So we could be parents, we could be citizens, we could be professionals. So now all these are our functional identities. They don't describe who we are completely, but they will describe functional. Somebody might be a student, that's the functional identity. Somebody might be a software engineer, that's a functional identity. So the Bhagavad Gita says that we can serve Krishna even through our functional identities. We as parents, we don't see these are my children. We see these are Krishna's children interested in my care. It's my job. I see these abilities are given to me by Krishna. Let me use them to do my responsibility in the world. And this is broadly called as inclusive bhakti. There is immersive bhakti. Inclusive bhakti means we turn away from the world when we are practicing immersive bhakti. But we turn toward the world and we act in the mode of service to Krishna. Rupa Goswami calls this as the Aropa-siddha bhakti. That he says that when we serve in the world, that's also a form of bhakti. So karmanatam abhyarcha siddham vindati manam. So when our various roles are connected with Krishna, so we could say, if we talk about meaning, we all want something meaningful in life. Say we take care of our children and we do it in a very diligent way. But sometimes our children grow up and they don't listen to us, they sometimes disappoint us, they sometimes give us headaches, sometimes they give us heartaches. And then we feel, oh, what is this? What is the point of this? If we have defined ourselves solely as a parent and our source of meaning is primarily taking care of our children, then that doesn't work out well. That can be disappointing and devastating. But if we see, I'm not a parent, I'm a soul who is a part of Krishna, and I'm serving in the role of parent. I'm serving my child, but I'm also serving Krishna by serving my child. So then we do that in a mood of service. And that mood of service connects us with Krishna. Of course, we care for our children. In fact, we care more for our children at that time. But then through that, we are developing our connection with Krishna. So we could say there are sources of meaning which are dependent. They depend on external things working out right. But there are independent sources of meaning. And the only independent source is Krishna. So we need to connect the dependent sources of meaning with the independent source of meaning. Then our life will actually become truly meaningful. For most people, they cannot give up the dependent source of meaning. You cannot just give up your family, give up your job. Even for those who become brahmacharis and sannyasis, even they have their nature. So, and they serve according to their nature. So that's what gives meaning, but it is connected with the supreme source. So that is the second level of question, existential questions. What is truly meaningful for you? So the highest level of questions are beyond this. That is, there are transcendental questions. So these are questions about Krishna. When we are asking existential questions, we are still trying to find out what is the source of meaning. But when we have found out that Krishna is the ultimate source of meaning, then at that time we want to know more and more about Krishna. And these questions are what are featured in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other places where there are already people who are very wise. Parikshit Maharaj is not ignorant. Parikshit Maharaj is already enlightened. But he wanted to know more and more about Krishna. And these questions actually bring fulfillment. In fact, they take beyond fulfillment, they can even give ecstasy. So the more we absorb ourselves in discussing about Krishna, the more the answer to those very questions. Okay, I want to know more about Krishna. Krishna performed this Leela. Okay, what was the thoughts of this character? What are the thoughts of that character? What is happening here? What is happening there? As we learn, as we dive deeper and deeper into this discussion, then what happens is that inquiry, that actually makes the whole study of the Gita. That question and that line of inquiry fills us with ecstasy. In the Bhagavad Gita, for example, I'll give an example of the transcendental question and I'll conclude the talk. And then we'll have your questions, if there are any. So, now, in the Bhagavad Gita, how many chapters are there? 18 chapters. How many verses are there? 700. How many questions are there? You know? Okay, there are 17 plus 1. There are 17 questions asked by Arjuna, and there's one question asked by Krishna. It's like at the end of a talk, the speaker may ask, do you have any questions? So, like that, Krishna at the end of the Gita asks, Arjuna, have you heard attentively? And have you understood? So, of course, there is, you could say, one more question, that is by Dhritarashtra. But we don't like Dhritarashtra, so we'll cancel that question. So, there are a total of 17 questions that Arjuna asks. And in the middle of the Gita, more or less Arjuna's existential questions, they finish by chapter 10. By chapter 10, specifically if you consider, in 10.8 to 11, and the Chatushloki Gita is there. And after that, Krishna speaks, Param Brahma Arjuna speaks, Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. He says that you are the supreme truth, you are the supreme reality. I accept everything that you say. So in one sense you could say, this is Gita's chapter, till chapter 10, they are existential questions. Arjuna is trying to understand what is the right course of action for him. But thereafter, there are more transcendental questions. Now this is a little simple classification, but it overall applies because at this point Arjuna is enlightened already. And in the 10th chapter, when he asks a question, he asks, Katham vidyamaham yogim svam sada parichittayan keshu keshu cha bhaveshu chintyosi bhagavan maya. He says, you have told me to remember you always. I am going to be in the material world. So I cannot just constantly be hearing your katha, be in your temple, doing your puja. So how can I remember you while I am in this world? You have told me that you pervade the entire world. So can you please explain to me how you pervade the world? Vistarenatmano yogam. Vistare. Please tell me. Bhuya kathayat sruktiri shruvato nasti me amritam. He says, I am never satiated by hearing. So please speak in detail. So Krishna speaks in the 10th chapter. And then at the start of the 11th chapter, Arjuna asks another question. Like again Arjuna says that if there's any doubt that Arjuna's questions are transcendental, he says, Mohoyam vigato mama. He says, by the words that you have spoken till now, my illusion is gone. And he says, now by asking you questions, in one sense, the Acharyas explain the questions are for the world's benefit. Arjuna doesn't need to be enlightened, he just wants to be enriched. So, and it is for Arjuna's enrichment and the world's enlightenment. So he says, can you show me your universal? Manyase yadi tatshakyam maya drashtumiti prabho yogeshwar tato me tvam darshayatmanam avyayam. If it is possible, can you please show me your universal form? He says, this is humility in asking. When Srila Prabhupada initially started practicing, started sharing Krishna Bhakti, one of his early disciples, Hayagiri Prabhu, came to Prabhupada and he said, Swamiji, I've been following the rules for 6 months. I've been chanting regularly and I've been following the rules. I haven't seen Krishna till now. When will I see Krishna? And Prabhupada was working on his Bhagavad Gita. At that time, Prabhupada turned the Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter. And Prabhupada should read this verse. Okay, he read it. Now, the cultural context was so different for him. Okay, he says, read it again. And they read, if you think I'm Manyase Ritachyakyam. If you think it is possible. So then he understood. So Prabhupada said, a devotee desires to see Krishna, but a devotee never demands to see Krishna. We always want to, if we don't want the darshan of Krishna, then where is our devotion? But if we think, Krishna, come and give me your darshan. Then where is our service attitude? So in one sense, Prabhupada translated bhakti as devotional service, isn't it? So devotion means we have the desire for darshan, but service means there is no demand for the darshan. So Prabhupada said that we wait for Krishna. So Arjuna himself, he said, if it is possible, you show me a universal form. And then Krishna shows the universal form. And Krishna, in one sense, plays with Arjuna. Krishna says, okay, I'll show you what you have asked for, but I'll show you something more. And then Arjuna is intrigued, okay, what more are you going to show me? And then Arjuna starts seeing. And as he starts seeing, Nantam na madhyam na punastavadim Pashyami Vishveshwara Vishwarupa. He says, I'm looking at the left, I'm looking at the right, I'm looking at the top, I'm looking at the bottom. Everywhere I see universal form. That means basically Krishna is saying how the universe is contained within his cosmic body. So he says, he identifies the universal form. And then he is describing what he's seeing. He's astounded, he's thrilled. But then suddenly something changes. Once I gave a class, and after that one devotee came with a big smile on his face. He says, Prabhu, your class was awful. I said, what? I looked at him and, what? And he was like a big smile. I was wondering whether he was sarcastic. He says, what did you say? Your class was awful. Okay, I had not heard wrong. Then I probed a little bit. And then he was just learning English. So he wanted to say awesome. And he said awful. So how this now what happened for Arjuna when he sees the universal form. He sees it from the verses 15 to 31. Initially, till around verse 23, 24, he feels that the form is awesome. And then he starts feeling it is awful. He sees something very scary. He's seeing this universal form, there are hands and legs everywhere, there are heads and faces. And then he sees a blazing fire coming from its mouth. And then not to see the blazing fire, it is not just fire coming out, but suddenly he sees as if it is all happening on the battlefield. Suppose somebody invites you to watch a movie and you're told it's a romantic comedy, so you sit down for the light entertainment. And then you find it's a horror movie. So Arjuna is expecting some dramatic, awesome sight. But suddenly he starts seeing something quite ghastly. He says this deadly looking being. The fire is coming from his mouth and the fire is spreading all over the battlefield where he's on. And all the warriors that are in the battlefield. Dronam cha Bhishmam cha Jayadrutam cha. This is all of them entering into the mouth. And they're getting burnt. Some of them are smashing against the teeth of the universal form. It's getting destroyed. They're incinerated or they're shattered. What is this? Arjuna, although he is himself a seasoned warrior, capable of fighting and encountering even the blood, extremely grisly scenes, this is too much. And at that time, he says, Akya himeko bhavanu grarupo. I ask you, who are you? Now in Sanskrit, there are two second person pronouns. Now, first person is I, second person is you. Now in English, there is only you as second person. But in Sanskrit, there is Tvam and there is Bhavan. Tvam is like tu. And Bhavan is A. So suppose we are sitting and then watching TV at home and suddenly the phone rings. You pick up the phone. Kaun hai? Kaun hai tu? You find it's our boss. Oh, sir, मैं आपके लिए क्या कर सकता हूँ? If you find it's boss, so the Tvam will change to Bhavan. So when Arjuna, even when he surrenders to Krishna in 2.7, this Prachami Tvam Dharma Samurajita. There it is Tvam. But in the 11th chapter, we see this awesome form. It becomes Kono. Akya himeko bhavanu grarupo. So what's happening over here? Now this question is very strange. Who are you? In one sense, Arjuna has already identified that you are the Vishwarupa. And then he's still asking, who are you? And Krishna's answer is also interesting. He says, Kalosmi loka kshaykrit pravruddho lokan samahartun iha pravruttaha. So I am time, the destroyer of all the worlds. And I have come here to destroy everyone assembled on this battlefield except you. You means Arjuna and his close associates, the brothers and a few others. So now, this question answer is fascinating. And the Gita's commentarial tradition has gone deep into this. So why is Arjuna asking this question? Who are you? See, the Gita begins with, say Arjuna here, Krishna here. And they're having a discussion. Initially, it's like Arjuna is giving instructions to Krishna because Krishna is a chariot. Take my chariot here, take my chariot there. But then the dynamic slightly changes. Arjuna is here, Krishna is here. It's like he becomes his teacher. This is 124, this is 27. And Krishna is accepted as a teacher. But then in the 11th chapter, when he shows show me the universal form, at that time, it's, okay, normally we see say, Arjuna is here, Krishna is here, and Krishna says, I'll show you the universal form. This is 11th chapter, 11.45. But when actually he shows the universal form, what happens is Arjuna is here, and only the universal form is everywhere. Krishna is not there. That's why Arjuna is not asking Krishna, what is that? Who is that? There is no Krishna to ask. Who are you? Is asking. And now when he asks, who are you? So he's already identified with the universal form. Then why is he asking that? So actually, suppose you have met your old friend after 10-15 years, you're going out for a walk, and you're going out for a walk and suddenly a group of thugs, half a dozen thugs suddenly attack you. And then, before you can respond, your friend exhibits some martial art moves, and all those 6 thugs are lying on the ground. And then we may turn to our friend and ask, who are you? Like they say, I'm your friend. That's not the question, isn't it? So what happens is, if there is something familiar or someone familiar, and then suddenly they exhibit something unfamiliar, then we ask, who are you? Like if we have a friend who is normally very serious and sober, and one day they start making a lot of jokes. And who are you? What have you done to my friend? Isn't it? So when we see something unfamiliar in the familiar, when we ask, who are you? What we mean is, what is this unfamiliar? What is this new mood or new disposition, new activity that you are doing? Who is this person? So then our friend may say, actually in the last 10 years, I have learned karate, now I'm black belt. Oh, okay. So for Krishna is shown him the universal form. Now normally universal form means that he shows how the entire universe is contained within him. Normally, according to physics, the universe has 2 broad attributes. There is space and then there is time. So generally speaking, whenever Krishna shows the universal form, in the past whenever he has shown, it is in terms of space. How all the space is covered by the form of the Lord. But you remember, Krishna told Arjuna that I will show you something more. So the more that Krishna shows over here, that Krishna has not shown before, to Duryodhana or to anyone else, that more is the Kala Rupa. That the Krishna, if he is the universal form, then he pervades across space and he pervades across time. So that Kala Rupa is what has unnerved Arjuna. Like when we ask, our friend, who are you? I want to know, where did your this martial arts skill come from? That's what I want to know. So when Arjuna asks Krishna, Aakya imeko bhavanugra. So he's asking, okay, what is this fierce form? And Krishna says, therefore his answer is, he doesn't say I am Krishna, he doesn't say I am Vishnu Rupa. He says, I am Kala. I am Kala. And then after that, Arjuna becomes very reverential. And there's only one place in the Bhagavad Gita where Arjuna offers prayers to Krishna. Because normally they are friends. But you cannot be friends with the universal form. Universal form is just how inspiring. He just offers prayers. And then after that, Krishna teases Arjuna a little bit. Arjuna says, you showed me your universal form. Thank you very much. I'm very indebted to you. But now, please return back to your normal form. And Krishna says, Arjuna, this form is extremely rare. No one has seen this. Even the gods can't see this. And this is okay, but I want to see your two-handed form. So even by studying Vedas, by performing great tapasya, you cannot see this form. That's okay, but I don't want to see it anymore. So then Krishna shows him the Chaturbhuja Rupa, and then he comes back to the Dvibhuja Rupa, four-handed form and the two-handed form. So this is the example of a transcendental question. So there are many transcendental questions which help us dive deeper into Krishna consciousness. So for example, when Krishna ate mud, why did Krishna eat mud? When Putana came to kill Krishna, why did Krishna close his eyes? Those are transcendental questions. So we are defined by the questions that we ask. If we want to improve not just our standard of living, but the standard of our life, that means we need to raise the standard of our questions. The more the higher questions we ask, the higher will become the quality of our life. And the less we will be dependent on externals for happiness. What Krishna says, Shantim param achirena digacchati. So as our questions rise from circumstantial towards existential and more toward transcendental, then more and more peace will come simply by getting the answers to the questions and learning more about Krishna, becoming more absorbed in his remembrance and in his service. So the purpose of logic, purpose of intelligence is to ask questions. But one purpose of intelligence is also to ask which questions are worth asking. And there are hundreds of questions that can be asked. But to question our questions, to question which question is really important worth asking, that is a sign of a greater intelligence. And it is that intelligence which is provided for, is guided by the Bhagavad Gita. Somebody asks a question, that is good. But ask which questions are really worth asking. And when we seek answers for these questions, then that is where we will find that supreme peace, the joy that will completely fulfill our heart. So that is what happens to Arjuna at the end of the Gita. That's why he says, Nashto moha smriti. My illusion is gone and I have become composed. Titos vigata sandeha. That is a state we all can attain by studying the Bhagavad Gita and asking the questions that drive us towards enlightenment and towards enrichment. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. I started by discussing about the Gita verse 4.39, how we discuss the process to knowledge. The process to knowledge was, remember, knowledge comes through faith. The idea of faith is, and that the questions are worth asking and getting the answers to the faith, dedication, and regulation. So these will lead to that. But from there, we'll get the supreme peace. So in our education system, we discussed how these are covered. So we have the process we may follow, but that does not bring intrinsic satisfaction. Then we discussed which are the questions worth asking. So I talked about my experience, how knowledge itself didn't bring any intrinsic satisfaction. So what were the three levels of questions? Does anyone remember?
Circumstantial.
First is circumstantial questions, and those are what we ask about. Even the animals ask about them. We humans may ask them in more sophisticated ways, and those questions are about means for living. They're important in their own way. Food, sleep, reproduction, security, they're important. But then above them are existential questions. These are about not means but meaning. What will bring meaning in my life? So the big illusion of modernity is that improving means will also improve meaning. But that doesn't happen automatically. And then we can have many different sources of meaning, but there is one source of independent and supreme meaning, that is Krishna. We discussed about how family, nation, profession, all of them can give us meaning, but they can give lasting meaning when they are connected with the lasting source. And that is transcendental questions. They are the questions about what will actually not just bring meaning, but the supreme fulfillment in life. And then they gave an example of transcendental questions. So Arjuna's transcendental questions, how they can enrich us, right? Especially the 11.31 question I discussed, 31, 32, and how we can get deeper understanding of the Kala Rupa, Vishwa Rupa, Vijayabhija Rupa, and like that, the transcendental questions which can increase our absorption in Krishna, our attraction toward Krishna, and therein the lasting satisfaction will follow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Should I ask?
Yes, please.
So did you finally come to US to study?
Okay. I decided to, at that time, I decided to wait and watch because I was introduced to Bhakti, so I decided to study software. I got a software job in India. I was waiting for these applications. I decided to wait for 1 year. But then at that time I was teaching the Bhagavad Gita also. So once I was teaching small level to students in colleges. So once I had an evening program, and my boss told me, my company, I was working Patni Computers at that time, said that we have a deadline, you have to stay on tonight. So I said, I'll come back early tomorrow and I'll work on it. He said, no, we have completed today. I tried to explain, just not ready to listen. So I stayed on, and I tried to arrange for somebody else to go for the program, but nobody else was available. So we had to cancel the program. So that night when I was coming back, I was thinking that, if I am not doing the software job, there are hundreds of other people who can do it as well, if not better than me. But if I am not sharing the Bhagavad Gita's wisdom, how many people are there who are going to do it? So I felt that I could contribute to society much more by sharing the Gita's wisdom than by working in software. So that's when I decided to dedicate my life to studying and sharing the Bhagavad Gita. So that was 1998. So I didn't come to America at that time. 2014, after 15 years of studying the Bhagavad Gita, since then I have been coming to America every year for 5-6 months to speak of the Bhagavad Gita. Great. Yes, please. Yeah.
What can you do to connect with God as a kid?
What can you do to connect with Krishna as a kid? Ask this question. That itself is an auspicious question. So see, every age in life has some natural inclination. As children, we want to play. As we grow older, we explore relationships. As we grow older, we have a family responsibility. Each age has its own particular natural inclination. So it's not that we have to give that up, but we try to connect it as much as possible to Krishna. So we play games, we try to find devotional games. Nowadays many devotees are making, even the video games are a big thing, now devotees are making like Vedic theme-based video games. So, or we have some abilities, like in childhood our memory is very sharp. So we can memorize verses, we can memorize songs. Then we can, if there are competitions, we can participate in competitions. We can do dramas where we can play various roles in Krishna Lila. And in that way, whatever activities we would normally do as a child, and we learn new things, we explore new things. We try to do as many of those as possible in relationship with Krishna. Okay? Then eventually as we grow up, maybe we'll find some talent, some ability which we have, which is Krishna's gift to us. And later on we can use that also more in Krishna's service. Okay? So when we talk about serving Krishna, the broad principle is, see if you can say, these are our interests. And say this is the circle of bhakti, of service to Krishna. So we try to find out this intersection. Where do my interest, my present interests intersect with my ultimate interest? Krishna is Swarthagati, he is the ultimate interest. So some of us may be naturally interested in music, some of us may be naturally interested in language, some of us may be interested in art, some of us may be interested in cooking, some of us may be interested in management. So whatever is our immediate interest and what is the ultimate interest. If we can find the intersection in that, then that's where we can try to connect with Krishna. Yes.
What if you have interest in sports?
Yes, that's natural. We have interest in sports and Krishna says, Yukta Ahara Viharasya. So Vihara is recreation. Sports is recreation. We can play sports. The only thing is we don't want it to become like infatuation for us. If that's what we are thinking of all the time, then it can be a distraction. But if we are especially talented in some sports, then if that becomes our profession in future, even that can be used in Krishna's service. If somebody becomes a celebrated person in any area, whether they're in software, in business, in sports, then if they become successful and then they say, okay, what makes you tick? And they say, no, I pray to Krishna, I chant Krishna. That can inspire so many people in the future. Whatever we do, we can connect with Krishna in the future. But right now, we find out the activities that connect with Krishna and stay connected with him. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, can I have some water, please?
Thank you very much for a wonderful, engaging lecture. It was very enlightening. My question is, you mentioned to perform inclusive bhakti for myself. I have an existential question which is blocking me to ask transcendental questions. In this inclusive bhakti, where I use my psychophysical nature to serve Krishna, you said that whatever my nature is there, I can find that intersection of the Venn diagram. But there comes the false ego. Sometimes I am not able to identify between, is this my false ego trying to do the service like I am doing, or Krishna is really inspiring from within to do this service. And when the I comes, I try to always find the intention behind this, even intention behind going to the temple, intention behind doing the service. But every day it becomes very exhausting, like trying to find sit and write in the intention. So I'm having hard time to bifurcate between the ego driven service or the true service.
So how do you differentiate between say ego-driven service and authentic spiritual service? I don't think there has to be a very rigid differentiation, because the key principle is the three broad levels you could say. There is service, then there is devotional service, and then there is pure devotional service. So it's a stepwise process. It's like you cannot take a long jump from here to here. It will just fall down. So initially start with service. Like some people, they just like to do some service. They like to serve. If they go to a venue, they like to weekly serve food. And it just happens to be a Krishna program. They don't have any devotion, but doing some service. I say, even that is good. She talks about this in 12.10. Actually 12.11. So even by this unity. Then he talks about this in 12.10. And this he talks in 12.9 and 12.8. So if we can do devotional service, that means we have it in the mind, this is for Krishna. That intention is clear, and that's why it makes it special. And pure devotional service means this is only for Krishna. Even if I get no pleasure in this, still I will do it. It's only for Krishna's pleasure. So to get to that level, initially is difficult. And it is not that Krishna's happiness is not in our unhappiness. That means it is not that if we like to do something, Krishna doesn't want us to do that. Because you like to do it, therefore you are getting some happiness, and that won't make me happy. No, it's not like that. So, if we feel inspired to do something, just go ahead and do it. Generally, the sign of ego is twofold. For example, if somebody has a natural ability to sing, they have natural talent, and they have nice voice, and they can learn and they can sing. So they should do that. Now, is it coming from Krishna? Is it coming from their ego? Well, wherever it is coming from, that ability is ultimately coming from Krishna. And Krishna has not given us ability so that we neglect or reject it. He wants us to use it. So now I remember one day I was in an ashram in India, and this devotee was a brilliant singer. And he wanted to learn some special ways of singing, some special instruments, go to Bengal and learn the traditional ways of singing, following the tradition of Mahaprabhu in Bengali culture now. So then he went, he stayed there for 1.5, 2 years, and he came back. And then after he came back, normally our kirtan involves participation. Then the leader sings and then everyone follows. His kirtan was a performance, not a participation. Because he would sing in such complicated tunes that nobody could follow. Just you create a sense of marvel. But there's no following at all. And then it was not that he would take one complicated tune and make it easier for people to understand so that everyone could follow. No. Just you do one complicated tune and immediately you do another complicated tune. So it is more like, just see how good I am. So if it just becomes an exhibition, then the point is exhibition, not service. That means we want everyone to participate. So if it happens like that, then it is a sign of ego. And you just want to show off to others. Somebody says, I'm such an excellent cook. Oh, I will cook the best sweet rice that you have ever tasted. But I will need 6 hours to cook it. And I'll cook in a small pot that will be enough for 6 people. But we have 60 people coming for the program. I can cook for 6 people. You can cook great, that's fine. But if the service requires that we have to be willing to somewhat lower our standards, we can cook at a very high level, but we have to lower our standards so that the service is done. It's only if it's for showing off at the cost of service, then it's a problem. And then, if it leads to, you could say, disrespect of others. The second thing. So what happened with this devotee eventually? He would come for the morning program and he would participate. And he started saying, anybody would sing Mangalarti, you don't know how to sing. I was saying Tulsi Puja, you don't know how to sing. And finally he told the temple leaders, nobody in this temple knows how to sing. Therefore, for the entire morning program, I only should sing. So the devotee leaders told him, the Krishna says that he is Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome. It's not Yome professional art singer. The Krishna is concerned about the Bhav. So if we are doing a service and we just want to show off to others and then we want to show others negatively, you can't do this, you can't do that. That is when ego is coming. But otherwise, if we have been given abilities, use them all out. Excel in the service to Krishna. Any other questions?
There. So, we are given the rules that we should follow from Prabhupada and also from Charan. So, the intention of following those rules is because we can be firm in our devotion, we are consistent, and it affects our purity as well, with which we can perform our devotion, which is important. Now, in some situations, if we have to break those rules so that others are involved in Krishna consciousness movement, so what is higher? Because in one case, if we are breaking the rule which may affect our purity, but on the other hand, the intention is to bring someone in so that they are also involved. So what is higher and what is the guidance and direction?
Well, if we break our rules so that others can be engaged, so is it better or it's higher? It depends on which rules it is. In Bhakti there are primary, there are secondary, and there are tertiary rules. So, say if we go to meet our relatives and we want to engage them in Bhakti, and we're talking about various things, we talk about Bhakti also. I say, I want to spend time with them. So when I go to my relatives, I won't have any time to chant my rounds. That's a primary. That's not something she compromise. Now, if you're going to our relatives and we eat food cooked by them, we may not want to eat food which is not properly offered. But, if there are old relatives and they will feel bad if you don't take that food, and that can sometimes cause a lot more negativity, then just offer the food in the mind and take it. You don't want to take meat, obviously. But, if we take occasionally some food like that, it's not an issue. In Maharashtra, there is Ganesh Utsav is a very big festival. So now on Ganesh Utsav, people offer modak to Lord Ganesh and they offer it. They offer it to everyone. That is a time like Diwali or Christmas over here, people open their homes and hearts, visit people, they bond with people. And if at that time they give our devotee Ganesh Utsav, and normally we take Krishna Utsav. At that time, if we say, I won't take this, what fanatics you are. This is prasad. We worship only Krishna. You are not worshipping Krishna, you are fanatics of Krishna. So, if throughout the rest of the year, all our meals are food offered to Krishna, and one little morsel we take of something, we can pray in our mind to Krishna. Can't offer it to Krishna because it's already offered to Lord Ganesh. We just chant Hare Krishna in our mind. We can pray to Krishna. Krishna, I'm accepting this only as a service so that I can help you. That's fine. Now, but if somebody says we meet our old friends and they go to a bar, they say let's go to a bar and let's drink. If it involves breaking the four regular principles, then we don't want to do that. So we have to consider which is going to be, it's like we have to balance out. So there is going to be a balance between our purity and we could say others' perception. So if there is a little decrease in our purity and there is a huge positivity in people's perception, then, well, there's no wrong in that. And sometimes for maintaining a little purity, you have a huge negativity in the other's perception. Then it's not really necessary. So, I faced this challenge when I started doing Western outreach. So I had gone for a college program and mostly American audiences were there. So after that program, one girl asked a question. Why do different religions fight with each other? And then I answered elaborately and she was quite happy with the answer. So after the session I was talking to the people, so she came and talked about this question has been burning for so many years. I asked the question to so many people. She says, your answer has satisfied me the most. I'm so grateful to you. Can I give you a hug? So then, I couldn't say yes, but I couldn't say no also. Because she was simply expressing her gratitude in her own way. So I looked at the devotee who was organizing the program and signaled that please help me. So then he helped me, but it was entirely unexpected. So he stepped forward and says, he's a monk. On his behalf, you can hug me. His wife was with him. His wife stepped forward. I am his wife. On his behalf, you hug me. The two of them hugged each other. So it's protection through parampara. So we have to make sure that now I didn't want to hurt her, but at the same time there was something which I could not do. So afterwards I talked with the devotees who were regular outreach. They say that there are, and I know it's not a recommendation. They say if somebody hugs you, you don't have to say no, but you don't have to hug them back. So that's something which I haven't had to do till now. But we have to be careful. We cannot alienate in the name of our purity. We cannot alienate other people. Any other questions? Yes, please.
So there's so many questions you mentioned, and you kind of said Krishna is the answer, like at the topmost. So if the answer is so simple, why do we need so many commentaries, and why are we discussing it over and over, and why does it still grip us, and why is it so simple?
So if the answer is so simple that Krishna is the source of ultimate meaning, then why do we need so many commentaries?
Yeah.
Well, in the Bhakti tradition, in general, enlightenment has two aspects to it. One is, it is a destination. But simultaneously, enlightenment is also a we are directing our love, our heart, our attention to so many things. Maybe sports, maybe money, it may be fame, it may be social media following, it may be so many things we direct our attention to. So it's a destination is where to direct our love. So when we are enlightened, our love, after going through various objects, it culminates in Krishna. So in that sense, enlightenment is a destination. But at the same time, Krishna is unlimited. And Krishna is unlimitedly lovable. He is unlimited and is unlimitedly lovable. He has so many attributes which we can keep knowing constantly. And in that sense, enlightenment is an ongoing journey. So in one sense, first stage of enlightenment is whom to love. That's enlightenment. The second is, okay, how lovable is? How can I enter into that world of love? And I can keep entering into that world of love more and more. In the Bhagavad Gita, this pure dynamic, it is seen in verses 10.8 and 9. 10.8 is about enlightenment as a destination. It says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitah. So the word Buddha is cognate with Buddha, the enlightened one. So it says, who are the enlightened ones? Those who understand that I am the source of everything, and therefore bhava samanvitah, they wholeheartedly devote themselves to. But then in 10.9, Krishna says that Machitta Madhyata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam. He says Bodhayanta Parasparam. Now Bodhayanta is a word associated with Buddha. They enlighten each other. Now if they are already enlightened, why do they need to enlighten each other? Because Krishna is enlightened. And I can learn about Krishna from one perspective. You are based on my individual relationship with Krishna. You can learn about Krishna from other perspective based on your relationship with Krishna. So it's like Krishna is infinite, you could say, and say, I am approaching Krishna from this perspective. You are approaching Krishna from this perspective. So when the two of us talk, then we both mutually enlighten. So this 10.9 is not Tadvidhi Pranipatena Pariprashna Seva. This is not a disciple learning from a guru. This is people who are already devoted to Krishna. They keep learning and they keep relishing. And what I said earlier about this level of these transcendental questions that leads to fulfillment and ecstasy. That's what Krishna says in this verse. Bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha ma tushyanti. Tushyanti is contentment. It is fulfillment. Ramanti is delight, it's ecstasy. So the great commentaries of the Acharyas are meant to dive deeper and deeper into Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, in many of his commentaries, he has to guide people on the journey to enlightenment. That's why he analyzes various other philosophies and he establishes Krishna consciousness the highest. But the previous Acharya's commentaries are often the journey within enlightenment. How we can know more about Krishna and relish love for Krishna more. Thank you. Good question.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Very good. Yeah, you had a question.
You told about the process of, like you gave an example of irritated and annoyed. And Krishna is sitting in everyone's heart. But sometimes there are situations that we have to face. Like we're not able to see Krishna is in everyone's heart. Like, for example, story of Namdev, he can see God in dog also. So how to handle that kind of situation? How to see God in everyone's, sometime when the situation is different.
So are you saying that when we become irritated with some people,
Exactly.
so how can we see God in those situations? Or see God even in the people who irritate us? Well, bhakti always has to be practiced according to our level. So the Bhagavad Gita at one level tells Panditaha Samadarshinaha to Arjuna. The wise people see everyone equally. But yet in that very verse, what it is said is Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavyasti Shuni Chaiva Shupake Cha Panditaha Samadarshinaha 5:18. So in one sense, if you consider this is the Pandita. So at one level, they are seeing there is diversity of perception. Because they are seeing a Brahmana, a meat eater, so they are seeing a dog, an elephant. So for example, Brahmana, like that, meat eater, they are seeing different kinds of people. So that those are being seen, but there is something beyond that also that is being seen. A cow, an elephant, like that. A dog. So all these are being seen, but beyond this, they see each one of them is a soul. And as souls, each one of them is similar. So samadarshina. You see everyone equally. But the key word here is samadarshina, equal vision. It is, that is what is recommended. What is not recommended is samavartinaha. It is not that you act completely equally towards everyone. In real life, we reciprocate. If we come to our home and we see in the kitchen there is a small cat, and the cat is going towards the milk container to drink it, they clap and the cat runs. But if we come to our home and we see there's a big cat, now we have to run away. If we clap when there's a small cat, the small cat will go away. But if we clap when there's a big cat, then we'll go away. So Krishna says, Yathama prapadinte tam tataiva bhajamyaham. So Krishna says, I reciprocate. Although Krishna sees everyone equally as souls, but Krishna reciprocates with people. So similarly, we need to reciprocate. The same Bhagavad Gita that tells Arjuna to see everyone equally also tells Arjuna that fight against the Kauravas. Not because you hate them, but because they are disrupting society. And you have a duty to society to maintain social order. So if somebody is irritating us, then we try to evaluate. Is it just because I am in a irritable mood today? Is it I am making a small thing into a big thing? Or is it what they are doing is actually wrong? So if it is I am making a small thing into a big thing, then I just need to tolerate it. But if they are doing something which is wrong, then we have to mitigate it. We need to fix it. So when there is irritation, we have to evaluate where it comes from and then act appropriately. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Krishna also said, Shishtashtam, blade of grass, we have to be very light, or we have to be...
Okay, but what is the purpose of that? Trunadapi suneshina tarorapi sahishuna amanina manadena. After that, what is there? So humility and tolerance are so that we can glorify the Lord. So that we can become absorbed in glorifying the Lord. Kirtaniya doesn't mean doing constant japa. It means that, it definitely means that, but it also means that our whole existence is absorbed in the glorification of the Lord. So if you are chanting and somebody says, stop chanting, should you be humble, tolerant, and something? No. Our purpose of humility, so it's important to understand what humility means. Humility, it is not about devaluing ourselves. Oh, I am worthless, I am useless, I know nothing. Well, it is not so much as devaluing ourselves as it is valuing something bigger than ourselves. And ultimately, that bigger reality is Krishna. So sometimes we think that, I'm writing a whole book on this topic now, so sometimes we think that what is the opposite of humility? Ego. So we think of ego and humility as opposites. And that is true in one sense, but the reality could be a little deeper also. In one sense, on one side we have ego. I am everything. I know everything. But the opposite side of that, if you consider pendulum, it could be inferiority, insecurity. I am nothing, I know nothing, I am useless. But in between is humility. You know, I am someone. I know something. I can do something. Mamaiva amsho jivan. Krishna says we are amsha. Amsha means we are part, we are something. So to think I am everything is wrong. But to think I am nothing, that is also wrong. I am something. And I can do something in Krishna's service. So that is humility. Had a question?
Hare Krishna. No, my question is, you was explaining beautifully about the knowledge and the questions we should ask. But looking at Bhagavatam and multiple examples, sometimes with the knowledge, ego comes in. And ego results to the fall down, as you was describing about ego. So my question is, it's easy to understand that we are a spirit soul by reading literature. It is easy to understand by reading literature that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is easy to understand that the purpose of life is to awaken the love for Krishna. But how we can realize this knowledge? Because always in day-to-day hustles, we lose track of it. We try to do things mechanically in devotional service, in chanting. So yes, knowledge is important, but how to awaken the bhava?
So we can get the knowledge easily. Well, knowledge is also not very easy. It takes a lot of effort to understand. We may just mouth, oh, I know I'm not the body, I'm the soul. But it takes time to, as you rightly said, realize it. Time to realize the attraction towards Krishna. So rather than thinking of knowledge and realization as two separate things, we see them as incremental. So it's more like, you can put it, this is knowledge. So there is initially there's theoretical knowledge. Then there is applied knowledge. Then there is realized knowledge. So it's a journey. It's not that one is separate from the other. It's like say say somebody is practicing to be a doctor, then theoretically they understand. Okay, this disease is there, these symptoms are there, that means this disease is there. And then these are the chemicals that can counter this disease. And therefore this medicine contains these chemicals, so this medicine can be given. That's theoretical knowledge. Applied knowledge. That means if they get the disease, they take the medicine or they prescribe the medicine. Then they try it. And then when it works, they get the realization, yeah, this really works. So applied and realized are sometimes equated, but they are progressive. It is by application, realization comes. But generally, none of this will be possible without theoretical knowledge. So, jnana vijnana truptatma. Krishna says in the 6th chapter, it was that it is knowledge, which is in the theoretical form, the conceptual form, propositional form, and then in the realized form. Both are required. So we shouldn't devalue knowledge. That's the first point. And the second point is how do we realize that knowledge? How do we gain that bhava, that attraction towards Krishna? We start from wherever we can. That means, say, if you consider, this is the spectrum of activities in bhakti. There can be chant, there can be japa, there can be kirtan, there can be puja, there can be katha, there can be seva. So many things are there. So now there are some activities in bhakti. Maybe they give us strength. When we do them, we feel alive, we feel happy. So in one sense, we have taste for those activities. And there are some activities negative in the sense that, so here these activities give us strength. But these are activities, they require strength. We really have to gird ourselves. We have to use our willpower to do the activities. So for example, the Ekadashi. Now to take prasad, everybody has taste. Isn't it? That gives strength. I want to look forward. What prasad is there? Suppose somebody is fasting. Then that requires strength. For that we don't have taste, that is a test. So now for all of us, in the various activities that we do in bhakti, there are some which will give us strength and some which will require strength. And then many in between. So now it is important for us to find the activities that give us strength. That means that is Krishna is revealing himself to us through those activities. And we make it a point to do those activities regularly. So if somebody likes kirtan, then yes, we have our sadhana, but make sure that we spend some time with it. If we like to hear a particular devotee's classes, then make time for it. If we like to do puja, we like to chant shlokas, whatever it is that we like to do, that means whatever it is that enlivens us in our relationship with Krishna, we see that as a gift from Krishna. And we make time for that, not at the expense of our other expected devotional activities, but apart from that, or as a part of that also. And then slowly by that, as our relationship with Krishna develops, then the relationship will develop at one point, and from there it will spread to our various points. So it's like say, I am here and Krishna is here. So I may at present just have one activity that attracts me to Krishna. And that is my connection with Krishna. But if I maintain that, this is what the operational principle, the Goswami says, Yena kena prakarena manah Krishna niveshayet. Yena kena prakarena. Somehow or other, fix the mind on Krishna. That means whatever gives us taste, use that. And as our connection with Krishna develops, then that connection will gradually broaden. We will be able to start seeing Krishna in many other activities also. So, that's how our relationship with Krishna expands. So start with wherever we have taste and build on that. And gradually the bhava will come. Okay? Any other questions?
Very beautiful lecture. I have a follow-up question. So, can we say that enlightenment comes with realization? Does do both of them go hand in hand?
Does enlightenment come with realization? Yes, of course. You could say enlightenment is the highest state of realization. So there can be various levels of realization. So for example, I can say that, okay, gratifying my senses doesn't make me happy. That is also one level of realization. But can we say that anybody who's realized that is enlightened? Well, they're on the path to enlightenment. Generally, enlightenment means that we ultimately realize Krishna. So we could say that in one sense, there are, this is the path of increasing realizations. So I realize, okay, worldly things don't give me happiness. That is one realization. Then after that, oh, this Krishna Bhakti gives me some happiness. Nice. But then I say, okay, this kirtans give me, singing gives me great happiness. Nice. But then I may find that I start thinking, okay, any singing gives me happiness. I come to a temple, katha, I satsang, and I sing Krishna songs. And I go to a party and I sing Bollywood songs. That also makes me happy. But after some time we'll notice, hey, those songs, they give some titillation. But that deep connection with the heart, the fulfillment of the heart, that doesn't come. There's something special about it. So then, what is happening is, the Krishna element is becoming more prominent. And then as the Krishna element becomes most prominent, so enlightenment is the, you could say, the state of the highest realization. That Krishna, 7.19 in the book.
So for a soul, when they are, so the final stage for the soul would be like immersive bhakti, that would be enlightenment.
Would the final stage for the soul be immersive bhakti? Well, not necessarily. Because we can say that it depends on how Krishna wants that soul to serve. So, Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan at the age of 70. And in one sense, you could say he was practicing immersive bhakti. But his Guru Maharaj wanted him to spread Krishna Bhakti all over the world. So when he left, he had to think of so many logistics. Where will I get the funds? Where will I stay? But traveling involves so much contemplation logistics. Prabhupada did all that because he saw that as a part of his service to Krishna. Yes, of course, at the end of his life, the final days, he did come back to Vrindavan and he departed Vrindavan. So just, at the end of our life, we want to be involved in immersive bhakti. But we shouldn't think that inclusive bhakti is necessarily lower. Because what is higher is we pleasing Krishna. It is not that yes, we want to remember Krishna because that's our relationship with Krishna. But the most important thing is to serve Krishna as Krishna, to please Krishna. Some people think the perfection of life is chant Hare Krishna 24 hours. Well, good if you can. But the point is, we should be serving Krishna. Now, suppose we have some responsible service to do and somebody asks a question. And so somebody is giving a class. Somebody asks the speaker a question. The speaker starts chanting Hare Krishna. Well, it's neither a chanting Hare Krishna. But at that time, if you have taken the role of a speaker, then you should be speaking, not chanting Hare Krishna. The time for it. When Arjuna was on the battlefield, there is no record in the Mahabharata. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. When Arjuna was shooting arrows, he was shooting arrows. He was completely focused on it. So, the highest form of bhakti is that which pleases Krishna the most. And what will please Krishna? It depends on our particular situation, our particular service. The gopis, in one sense, they are immersed in Krishna, but they are not practicing immersive bhakti. They say that the gopis are churning butter. They are going about doing their various duties. They are absorbed in Krishna. Thank you. Any last question?
Last
Yes.
question. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, and please accept my Dandavat Pranam. The talk is very beautiful, very enlightening. I have this question on knowledge. You talked about three important points, like you should have faith, then dedication, definitely it comes after that, and regulation. So how to develop faith? And faith can be different types, like blind faith, and I can give an example. Like in my childhood, my mother said, like, if that black billy crosses the path, don't go. That I have that faith, and something happened, and from since that day, I have that okay, if any black cat crosses the path, I don't go. So I don't know whether it is true or not. So is faith can be different types, and how to develop a good faith or scientific faith, if you can enlighten us.
Okay, good question. So, can faith be of different types, and how do you develop a sound kind of faith?
Sound.
Yes. So I would say that I had faith that somebody would ask this question. So thank you for asking me. At the start of the class, which I did not emphasize much. I mentioned in the summary also, so that I thought somebody will ask for it. Because I drew the diagram. Essentially, I focused more on among the various forms of knowledge, that knowledge which leads to the highest peace. Param Shanti. I will talk about the three components of. Now, Shraddhaval Labhate Jnanam. So it's interesting that in the Western broad intellectual philosophical tradition, there has almost been like a divorce between what they call as belief and reason. So belief is where you believe. So for example, the Bible says, there are 10 commandments, follow them, believe in God. So most of the Christian tradition is in this direction. And there are many Western philosophers, especially since what they call as the Enlightenment, scientific revolution. Most of the philosophers, they have been leery about Christianity, they kept a distance from it. And so they have focused primarily on reason. Now of course, even within Christianity, there have been many rational philosophers. And even among the philosophers, there have been people who have enough theistic inclination. But in the Western tradition, there has been a significant rupture between belief and reason. And corresponding with that, some people say that there are people who are believers, and then there are people who are seekers. Seekers have questions, believers have beliefs. And people say, oh, just be a seeker, don't be a believer. Now, when people say the Vedic path is about being a seeker, not believing. But it's not that simple. In the Vedic tradition, definitely, there is a lot of emphasis on jnana, athato brahma jnana, inquire, ask questions. The Vedic tradition is filled with questions, and questions are about seeking. So seeking is emphasized, no doubt. But even when we are seeking, is seeking that separate from believing? See, even when I'm seeking, at that time, I need to have the belief that there is an answer to the question that I'm seeking. If somebody is seeking for gold, say, in the past when Europe discovered America, and they found certain places there was gold hidden, and there's a gold rush, especially for places in California and other places. So when people are digging at a particular place, they are seeking for gold. But while they are seeking for gold, they are also believing that there is gold over it. Or at least there is a possibility that there is gold over it. So there is no seeking without believing. Like say if you come from India to Canada, you sought, that's why you came. But then you also had the belief that life in Canada would be better. So belief and seeking are not necessarily two opposite things. They can both go together. In fact, most of the time they go together. So the test is that in general, when we have faith, when we are believing and we see, let's see your question about faith, let's focus on that right now. That faith, it can be of two types. It can be blind. That means that just somebody tells us and we just accept it uncritically. Now blind faith can sometimes lead to fanaticism. In the worst case, it can also lead to sentimentalism at best. Oh, you should do this, why should you do this? Like parents may tell you that, before you for exam, go to the temple and bow down to God. Why? Because you'll get good marks in exam. Okay. But then, my friend didn't study. My friend doesn't go to temple. He has got better marks than me. Oh, God's plan is inconceivable. Now, if you don't really give philosophical answers, then sentimental people either go away from that faith, or they can't stand tests to their faith. Or when they have tests, they just become fanatical. If you don't accept, you don't agree with me, I'll destroy you. So that is blind faith. It is either you could put it that either it is too weak or it is too forceful. Now, as contrasted that, there is, you could say, rational faith. Now, rational faith broadly has two components. It is sensible, it is verifiable. So, for example, when you go to a doctor, and when we say we are sick and we go to a doctor, say we have stomach upset, and the doctor says, I have to amputate your leg. What? My problem is the stomach, and your problem seems to be in your brain. I don't want to be treated by you. What they are saying has to make sense to us. And after saying, okay, you have got some acidity issue, take this medicine, in 3 days you will feel better. We check after 3 days. Do we feel better? If we do, then it's verified. And then every time we take a pill, we are putting faith in the doctor. But it's a reasonable faith, or it can be a rational faith. Similarly, on the spiritual path, when we hear philosophy, when we hear some talks, or we are told to do some practices, we are told some ideas, some truth claims are made. So we evaluate them. Do they make sense? And okay, now verifiable means, as I said, we may not, if Krishna exists, we say we may not be able to see Krishna immediately. But then what is verifiable? It's like even when if say my bone was fractured and the doctor says I have to do surgery, then we'll fix your bone. And then it's done. Can we ask the doctor, okay, you take out my bone and show me how it is fixed? You cannot have that verifiable.